What's up, guys? Brady Figueroa coming at you with a review for the new Malevolence album, Where Only the Truth is Spoken, released almost 2 weeks ago now, Friday, June 20th. I really do think there's a good amount of pressure on the band with this album, especially just after their last one, Malicious Intent, back in 2022, did so well. I feel like everybody just fucking loved that album. So purely from that, I mean, creating this next album that's going to be a follow-up to that beloved album, that's already a lot of pressure. Now, for me personally, that last record, Malicious Intent, is an album that I definitely enjoyed. I still think it's a good record, but it didn't and still doesn't blow my mind, which is the effect that it seems to have had on a lot of other listeners. To me, it sounded like pretty run-of-the-mill modern hardcore with some of that groove metal and at times metalcore influence, with maybe a couple notable exceptions, but it's besides the point. We're talking about this album now. To me, this record is a clear step down from Malicious Intent, pretty much in every capacity. There's multiple things that play into that, but for me, the biggest irritating factor, and this did kind of irritate me a little bit at times on Malicious Intent, but the biggest irritating factor for me on this album is that I really feel like they overdid the clean singing. The overwhelming majority of tracks on here feature clean choruses, which I get is a staple of modern metalcore, so maybe that's more of the sound they wanted to go for on this album. But to me, not only does it make a bulk of these songs feel calculated, but it actively neuters some of these tracks that have some seriously awesome and sick riffs and grooves. Like, take the track Imperfect Picture. I still am really into that intro groove. I think it's probably the best groove on the album for me personally. But then those vocals come in the verses and they just shit all over it, and it totally just drops down the energy. If It's All the Same to You, earlier in the record, kind of does the same thing. The song builds up a good amount of energy with those fast-paced, hardcore-influenced verses, and then the chorus comes in, and it's such a jarring shift for me. I think a lot of it has to do with the actual delivery of the vocals, because these verses, these verses that invoke just genuine anger, which is what they shoot for, they contradicts so much with these clean vocals, which remind me too much of like Texas Hippie Coalition. They have this weird southern metal vibe to them. At their best, maybe they sound like Machine Head. They're good albums. And at their worst, they sound like Five Finger Death Punch. Or again, like Texas Hippie Coalition, which is I know it's an obscure band, but it was the first thing that came to mind for me. And the track So Help Me God, that is probably the worst song on the record because of that clean chorus. I mean, they come out of those angry verses again and then gunshot, point blank, back of the head. It's like the aesthetic of these songs goes so jarringly from small, angry, pit-hungry hardcore show to Red State Butt Rock Festival. I don't get these transitions at all. And the clean vocals have a lot to do with that. And I know I can't be the only one who thought that after hearing the chorus on So Help Me God, like I just said. There's also In Spite and Trenches, where they kind of just come in out of nowhere and just feel, again, a little bit unwelcome to the angry mood of the song. The clean vocals in particular, they just don't sound angry, which is what the majority of the song is shooting for. There are two instances on here, two songs where I feel like the clean vocals were done in actual tasteful ways that fit the song. For one, with Dirt From My Grave, the closing track, those clean vocal melodies, they're kind of sprinkled in that chorus. They have more of a darker undertone to them, so I think they fit better because of that. Still maybe gives me Drowning Pool vibes a little bit, but again, at least the mood of the song at least feels a bit more cohesive in that sense. And then Heaven Shake, that clean chorus, it takes on more of, again, a darker and dramatic feel, which I think adds a lot to the song. And again, this is a song that, despite having this clean chorus, still feels like a tight unit. It doesn't have any awkward mood shifts like some of these other tracks do, like I just mentioned. So yeah, the clean vocals on this record were very off-putting to me, which is unfortunate. And it's even more telling and more frustrating because the best songs on this record for me are the ones that don't have any clean vocals, like Blood to the Leech, the opening track. That song fucking rips. Also Counterfeit, which is a track that really embraces that dissonance that I enjoy. There's also that just completely Pantera-esque, Dimebag-esque guitar solo later in the song. I think is fucking sick. Also, Demonstration of Pain. They come near the end of the record. The second to last song is another track that I really enjoy. These songs are just absolutely relentless the whole time, and it shows the band firing on all cylinders rather than trying to sound like they're reaching for octane airplay. Lyrically, I think Blood to the Leech might be my favorite song on here. And I say that because it does take a somewhat familiar theme of just kind of betrayal and wanting to cut someone out of your life. It takes that and still manages to make it interesting with some unique word choice. The rest of the album lyrically doesn't do a whole lot for me. I found moments like on If It's All the Same to You and on In Spite to just be a bit lyrically juvenile. And I just don't find this album to be saying much, which I think would have helped a lot of these clean choruses maybe go down a little bit easier if there were some clever lyrics attached to them or some unique song concepts in a sense. Because lyrically, when it comes to hardcore in particular, I feel like the two directions that work best are, for one, just raw anger, pit-hungry anger, stuff like that, or actually writing and singing, or screaming, I should say, about meaningful topics. There really aren't many tracks on here that hone in on one of those specific ideas. It's a lot of mix and match. It's a lot of stuff that's a bit more vague, which again feeds into kind of what I was saying about these songs overall feeling a bit incohesive, a bit disjointed. And there's also the issue of the ballad on here, Salt the Wound, which not really sure if I can call it a ballad because it does have its heavy moments, which is kind of my main criticism of the song. It doesn't know what it wants to be. Like, if they were to whip out a full-on ballad on this album, I think it would have been a nice change of pace. Like Higher Place was, even on the last record. That was a song that kind of did invoke Pantera a little bit, just in that style of balladry. But it was a cohesive song all the way through. Like, it followed a certain emotion before it did get heavy near the end of the track. This song just feels so robotic in a sense that it's so back and forth the whole time between just attempting to be beautiful melodies and this like stomping, melodramatic, angry sounding chorus, and then it goes right back into the balladry. Like this track feels the most incohesive maybe of every song on here. And listen, I know firsthand about when you're trying to blend these subgenres together like the band do on this record, it is very hard to keep things versatile and kind of take on new influences. Because this style, like hardcore, metalcore, groove metal all combining, like this is the exact style that I play on my solo record, on my solo material, which actually dropped a couple weeks ago on the exact same day. I'll have a link in the description for it. I had to get that plug in, but regardless, I know how hard it is to diversify an album with this blend of sounds. It is genuinely difficult, but I still think they could have done it in better ways than this ballad, because it really does feel to me forced and robotic as a result. I would have liked to see maybe like a Hatebreed, Blood-Soaked Memories type track off of their Perseverance record that's a bit more like sludgy and kind of like anxiety-inducing in a sense. Like on the drums, that song is played pretty much fully on the tom drums. Toms and snares, it doesn't really use any cymbals, so if that kind of conjures up some imagery there of what I'm trying to get at here. Or if they wanted to try something more melodic, maybe go for like a Pantera Shedding Skin, which has those kind of calmer parts spliced in throughout. But it at least feels still cohesive to the mood of the overall song. Whereas on this track, it's just so like delicate, angry. There's a difference there. If you want to use a more modern example, I think the band Jesus Piece on their newest album, So Unknown, a couple years ago, incorporated a lot of kind of diverse ideas within this overall sound. The band Harm's Way put out that new song, Abyss, even though the A is like turned upside down to be a V. That's a song that I think fits into that mold as well. And listen, I know I've spent the majority of this review criticizing this album, but at the end of the day, it's still a solid record. Like, there really isn't anything on this album that I thought was, like, bad, like, painful for me to listen to. The clean vocals maybe cringed me out a little bit here and there, but at the end of the day, this is still at least, like, a decent record. Production-wise, I don't think it's as strong as Malicious Intent was. I think that album just had a bit more of, like, that rawness to it. But I still like how this album sounds overall. It's just a bit of, like, a slightly cleaned-up version of the production on Malicious Intent. And there's still several songs that I genuinely really enjoy on here still, like Blood to the Leech and Heaven Shake and Dirt from My Grave. Counterfeit and Demonstration of Pain, and I think In Spite is a solid track overall. I just wish the guest feature, Randy Blythe from Lamb of God, was a bit more fleshed out. He only really is here for like 15 seconds. But overall, this is not a bad record by any means. I just wish that the clean vocals were either delivered differently or just used a bit more sparingly, because it really does feel like the band is trying to get a bit more radio action with some of the songs on here, which for my taste just contradicts the anger on here, which for me are the best moments on here. And for their next record, I would hope that they kind of ditch some of the clean singing and just keep firing on all cylinders, because my favorite tracks on here are proof that when they go for that, they could pull it off. The song gets a 17 out of 30 for me. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you've heard this album, please comment your thoughts on it below. Remember to hit subscribe for more rock and metal-related content and album reviews. Check the description of the video for my Instagram, Spotify, and Threads links, as well as a link to my original music. And until next time, thank you guys again so much for watching. I'll see you guys later. Peace.